Top of the morning to you. It's good to know you are here and you're going to be starting your morning with me. My name is Cynthia Bassi and welcome to the newspaper review here on Idea TV, where we break down and bring you the top stories, making headlines and making waves around Africa and beyond. And this morning we are going to be looking at some newspapers around the country, and the first newspaper I have here with me is the Guardian newspaper. But before that, I have to bring to your knowledge and notice that Idea TV University of Interest is out and is available online for you to download. It's available on PDF, it's available on our website, and of course it is the audio visuals are available on our YouTube channels. It's streaming even on Limex for you to watch. So if you like things around universities that are making impact in Africa, Idea TV is the right place to check that out. So we want to see you download the PDF and read. We want to see you watch and engage. And also you can even give suggestions about universities that you know around you or in your country that are making impact. We want to hear from you. We want to see them. And of course, we may spotlight them. But then let's get down to the newspapers we have for today. The first newspaper I have here is the Guardian newspaper. And the biggest story here is Tinubu seeks global allies to boost Nigeria's war against terrorism. Okay, I think we are still on the fight against terrorism amidst the designation of Nigeria as country of particular concern. And I think we are taking this matter seriously now. We are taking security concerns seriously now. And you can find that on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. And then looking downwards, we see 5 drug kingpins back 21 years imprisonment over Gabon and Australia-bound cocaine opioids. And you can find this on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. And PDP sacks Wabara-led BOT over alleged loss of moral balance. This can be found on page 28 of the Guardian newspaper. Okocha says Super Eagles 2002 World Cup team, my weakest Nigerian squad. And that's in sports section of the Guardian newspaper, and this can be found on page 30 of the Guardian newspaper. And then credible elections. Page 2, credible elections alone cannot sustain good governance, national cohesion. Kuka warns. Obasanjo, Jonathan, Lady Maiden, Alex Ibru. Others hail Abati's intellectual legacy. All this can be found on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. And then we see with the red highlights here, terrorism trial, court forecloses Nnamdi Kanu's defense, fixes November 20 for judgment. So we're still on Nnamdi Kanu's trial, and this can be found on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. And Anambra on the yellow highlight here, Anambra calm, peaceful as voters elect governor. So the Anambra election is on and voters are out doing their bid to make sure that they vote the right leader in. This can be found on page 29 of the Guardian newspaper, and then downwards on the black highlights, we see 2027 group commends Diri's defection to APC, pledges to mobilize 15 million votes for Tinubu. I think we're already preparing for the 2027 presidential election. Okay, this can be found on page 28 of the Guardian newspaper. And then let's go upwards of the Guardian newspaper, where special future can be found here on page 8 to 9 of the Guardian newspaper, and this is on health. World Diabetes Day, discordant tune over sugar sweetened beverages tax. Okay, that can be found on page 8 to 9 of the Guardian newspaper. And inside tough back page, why Nigeria needs more universities after all. I think Nigeria really needs more universities because we have a growing population, and of our youth are the major population we have in the country. And then moving to politics, on page 26, INEC, crucial reforms Nigerians crave for from Prof. Amopitan. All this can be found on the Guardian newspaper. Moving ahead, the Weekend Trust, on page 14, my house is my paradise on Earth, Kashim Musa Bichi. Okay, if you want to know what that story is really talking about, you can find this on page 14 of the Weekend Trust newspaper. And on page 32, we see terrorism. Court fixes November 20th for judgment in Kano's trial. Still in Kano's trial. If you want to know what the story is and what's unfolding, if you have been following the story, you can check this out at on page 32 of the Weekend Trust newspaper. And 2.7 million Anambra voters decided on next governor today. So today is the Anambra gubernatorial election, and we want to see what comes out of Anambra. So if you want to follow up with this story, you can find it on page 23 of the Weekend Trust newspaper. The bigger story here, taking a major space in the front page, is where is the money? I think this is going to be interesting. You can find this on page 4 of the Weekend Trust newspaper if you want to know where the money is. And then banditry, another big story here. Banditry, residents flee Kano villages. This can be found on page 10 of the Weekend Trust newspaper. If you want to know what that story is talking about, you can find all of these stories on the Weekend Trust newspaper. And moving ahead, Saturday Telegraph. Police deploy DIGs as 2.8 million voters decide Soludo's others' fate. So today, like we know, is Anambra gubernatorial election, and we want to see who emerges winner, or who comes out victorious, if I should put it that way. And all this can be found on police vow to safeguard process, one individual's political actors to be law-abiding. Voters upbeat as groups set up situation rooms. This is good. We know that CSO are already in Anambra State, policemen, all security agents, and every INEC staff, all delegates that needs to be there are already there and doing their bit to make sure that this election is successful. And all this can be found on page 4 and 5 of the Saturday Telegraph. And then moving up a little, changing university culture in Nigeria, insisting undergraduates wear uniforms make them look like secondary school pupils. Enacting laws hardly solves social problems, says Ezeibe. I guess we'll start seeing our higher institutions or students in higher institutions wearing school uniforms. I wonder how that will be. But all this can be found on page 28 and page 29 if you want to know what, get a deeper perspective or context of what that story is talking about. And the Army Chief charges troops to defeat Boko Haram insurgents. This can be found on page 4 of the Saturday Telegraph. And then one of the biggest headlines here, Nigerians in U.S. rejects Trump's attack threats. We're still on the Trump threat and the controversial statement he made and how it is taking a toll on Nigerians in different aspects and different sectors. All this can be found on page 2, 3, and 8. Only gullible people will believe American president's excuse. Global community can be silent when terrorism killings persist. That's from General Ikponwen. Government must flush out traitors in military, Professor Aworawo. And then Tinubu should seek Trump's cooperation to wipe out Boko Haram and ISWAP. Okay, says. I mean, if the U.S. president is ready for a diplomatic dialogue, like the president of Nigeria said, I think it will be the right step in the right direction. And we see also alleged terrorism down underneath of the newspaper. Court fixes November 20th for judgment in suit against Nnamdi Kanu. Still on Nnamdi Kanu's case, and this can be found on page 2 of the Saturday Telegraph. And 240 full-time students bag first class. Interesting. Good to see what Nigeria, we're churning out of Nigerian universities. I think we want to churn out potentials. I hope they have potentials. They're not just first class on papers. But then this can be found on page 7 of the Saturday Telegraph. And still on page 7, Energy, FG receives 21 million euros, signs pact with Germany. And on page 2, we see what Jonathan is saying, that Obasanjo made me president. Okay, this is coming from the one-time president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, that Obasanjo made him president. Lack of consensus building cohesion bane of Nigeria's development, Kuka said. All of these stories can be found on page 2 of the Saturday Telegraph. And police DRGs as okay, we've taken this story. Okay, I guess that's all for the newspaper or from the Saturday Telegraph. Let's see what other papers are saying this Saturday. Saturday Punch. Okay. Marital troubles. Nigerians in UK decry weekly visa cancellation. This can be found on page 11 of the Saturday Punch. And we have another story from the entertainment scene here. I think taking one of the, it's one of the biggest stories now. Regina Daniels wails as family feud worsens. We don't know how this case is going. We don't know how, it's, I mean, we just have to see what comes out of it next. But we hope the case or the issue gets solved once and for all. This can be found on page 16 of the Saturday Punch. And nursing college run by farmer shot. Owner detained after owner detained after Punch report. This can be found on page 24 of the Saturday Punch. And the biggest story here, Anambra decides. Today is Anambra's election. And Mopitam faces litmus test as 2.8 million votes today. This can be found on page 4. Also, IG deploys 55,000 security personnel. 98.8% PVCs collected. That's what INEC is saying. All of these can be found on page 4 of the Saturday Punch. Prophets of doom, sad tales of lives ruined by false prophecies. Okay, if you want to know what that truly means or what that story, the context of that story, it can be found on page 20 and 21 of the Saturday Punch. How Lagos building collapsed, Benue herdsmen wiped out by family. Okay, this is coming from a man, Bisman. You can see what that story is all about on page 15 of the Saturday Punch. And Deputy Senate President to Trump, withdraw your threat, apologize. So the Deputy Senate President is telling the U.S. President Donald Trump to, withdraw his threat and apologize to Nigerians. This can be found on page 4 if you want to get a depth into that story. I gave judgments without bias. My conscience is clear. Former CJN Ariwola. This can be found on page 8 of the Saturday Punch. And I think the last story here on page 19, Dangote refinery slashes petrol price by 49 naira per liter. Okay, you want to know what all these stories are talking about and have good context or deeper context into what they are talking about, it can be found on Saturday Punch newspaper. And then moving ahead, I have the Saturday Vanguard with me here. Nigerians to Tinubu, work with Trump to fight terror. Okay, I hope the president is listening. I guess that's what he's calling for already, that they should have a diplomatic dialogue. So I guess the Nigerian president is ready to work with the U.S. president if the U.S. president is ready to work with the Nigerian president. Okay, this can be found on page 9, this can be found on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper, the Saturday Vanguard. And then on page 5, threat of military action, wake up call for the federal government. Stop killings in every part of the country. Okay, this is what we have been talking about, that it's not a religious war. It's not just a religious killing. We can't really attest for genocide. We can't really call it genocide because everybody is dying. There's insecurity issues in Nigeria, both domestically, both in your, neighborhood and, almost every part of Nigeria. So I think security issue is what should be looked at with every seriousness that we need at this point in time, so we don't misrepresent ourselves on the global stage. And Russia monitoring events in Nigeria. This can be found on page 5 of the Saturday Vanguard. On page 6, Dangote Petroleum Refinery reduces gantry petrol price to 828 naira per liter. Okay. Obasanjo Jonathan Kuka hail Abati at 60. Okay, this can be found on page 22 of the Saturday Vanguard. What threats divides U.S. lawmakers on page 28 of the Saturday Vanguard. We predicted that after killing Christians, Muslims would be killed. It happened. That after Plateau, Benue would follow, then Kwara. Is southern Nigeria ready? Stop the killings now, Ladi Thompson, security consultant, says. This can be found on page 11 if you want to know what Ladi is saying. This can be found on page 11 of the Saturday Vanguard. And Anambra Showdown. Okay, Soludo, 15 candidates know their fate today. Today will decide the fate of who becomes governor in Anambra State. This can be found on page 14 of the Saturday Vanguard. And then we still see pictures on page 19 of Regina Danes and Bolaji Ogumola. So if you want to know why their pictures are there and what their stories, stories is talking about, if you want to have a deeper context, you can find them on page 19. Okay, page 19 of the Saturday Vanguard. And upwards, we see tension. IGPD's police officers need help. The police officers need help. Okay, we can find this on page 24 of the Saturday Vanguard. And terrorism charge. Nnamdi Kanu knows fate. November 20th as court adjourns for judgment. Can be found on page 5 of the Saturday Vanguard and on page 21 and page 30. On page 21, Air Peace takes delivery of Boeing 737 NG. And then on page 30, Senate clears it's over runway excursion. Okay, all this can be found on page 30 and page 21 of the Saturday Vanguard. And Ochanya's sister reveals more details about her death, about the case rather, how Ogbuja, wife and son killed her. This can be found on page 30. We've been seeing news about, this has happened since close to 2 years back or one, if I'm not mistaken, but then the case has resurfaced, Ochanya's case, the girl who was sexually assaulted by her guardians. So if you want to know where the case is leading to, where they are now with the case, you can find that on page 30 of the Saturday Vanguard newspaper. Home Affairs, marriage is not a rehabilitation center for unraised men. This can be found on page 18 of the Saturday Vanguard. When men fail, they are forgiven. When women fail, we pay for it. Is this true? If you want to get more context about this, you can find it on page 18 of the Saturday Vanguard. And the last paper with me here is Saturday Independent. Okay, biggest story still coming from Anambra State here. Anambra decides today. Anambra gets to, Anambra citizens or indigents rather votes today. Anambra votes as incumbency, federal might. Federal might, INEC scrutiny loom large. This can be found on page 8 of the Saturday Independent. And still moving to the entertainment scene here, why Nollywood will become #1 in the world. And this is coming from a legend in the film industry, the Nollywood industry, Omotola Jalade. If you want to get deeper context of what that is about, you can find it on page 9 of Saturday Independent newspaper. Mogaji, Ibadan's name didn't originate from Eba Odan. Okay, one for culture there. If you want to know what that's all about, you can find it on page 4 of the Independent, Saturday Independent newspaper. And Lagos and marks 34.635 billion naira for mile 2 Okoko rail line from 200 billion naira 10-year bond. Okay, that can be found on page 5. And on page 7, Ekiti PDP faces fresh crisis as aspirant alleges manipulation of delegate list. And FUTA convocates as 240 students graduate with first class honors. I think we're bringing a lot of first class graduates. Universities are churning out a lot of first class graduates this period. We like to see that. We hope it translates into real life actions to solve our problems and solve problems that are on demand. And we can find that on page 5 of the Saturday Independent. And going upwards, 5 drug kingpins back 21 years imprisonment over Gabon and Australia-born cocaine opioids. Can be found on page 7 of the Saturday Independent. And Yoruba Summit and the People's Great Expectations. Okay, that's on page 31 of the Saturday Independent, and that's much we can take from the newspapers. The stories making big, huge headlines this morning. And let's talk tech a little. So on tech here, we have some highlight, and this is from Elon Musk. Elon Musk could become world's highest paid CEO with $1 trillion Tesla package. So earlier this week, American automotive and clean energy company Tesla announced that its shareholders have voted in favor of CEO Elon Musk's almost $1 trillion pay package, with 75% supporting among voting shares. In simple words, they voted and approved a massive compensation deal for Elon Musk, and this package could be worth $1 trillion over the next decade. Interesting. And Musk will only get the full payout if Tesla accomplishes very ambitious targets. These targets include the company's value to reach around $8.5 trillion from its current, $1.4 trillion. Millions of vehicles sold annually, including robot taxis and, humanoid robots over a multi-year period. And most importantly, Musk remains the CEO for many years, ensuring that the company takes action on this grand vision. Now, if everything goes according to, plan, the 54-year-old billionaire becomes one of the highest paid executives in history, while the total could be up to $1 trillion, according to Reuters. After deductions, it could be about $878 in net terms. Interesting things coming from the tech world. Elon Musk have been doing a lot. I mean, we saw from him buying we know him as the big name in tech, from him buying X or Twitter, formerly Twitter, and now it turns it into X, and we see how he has introduced AI into X as well, which is Grok, and so many other chatbots he's introduced into X, and so many other things. We're seeing him in the automobile space. Everybody knows about Tesla and what he's doing with Tesla, and this is going to be a very big one for Tesla. Elon Musk is going to become the highest paid CEO. I mean, we cannot contest that because we know what he is made of and we know how ambitious he is. But I have another tech news with me here. And this is from Mexico. Mexico City is the most video surveyed metropolis in the Americas. Okay, Mexico has more... Okay, Mexico has more government video cameras in public spaces than any other city in Americas or in the Americas. There are more than 83,000 cameras that continuously record the daily life of one of the most populated cities in the world. New York, by comparison, has 71,000. Despite 83,000 public cameras, crime in Mexico City remains high, and widespread surveillance raises myriad ethical issues. So we are asking, there's so many questions to be asked. Mexico status as the video, as the most videoed, surveilled city in the Americas highlights the growing debate between public safety and privacy rights. That's what I need to start with first, because with over 83,000 government cameras, the city reflects, a global trend where urban areas rely on AI-powered surveillance for crime control and, traffic management. Yet, despite these cameras, crime rates remain, stubbornly high, suggesting that technology alone cannot solve deep-rooted social economic problems. There must be a balance, like we always talk. When we talk about tech, when we talk about, the digital world that we are right now, we have to infuse it with our realities. We have to infuse it with human capacity, human power, and see how we can solve real-time problems. This situation reveals a key challenge for smart cities worldwide. How to balance technological, control with ethical governance is very, very key at this point in time. When we talk of data protection, we talk of accountability, and citizens' rights must evolve alongside innovation. And ultimately, what I can say here is that Mexico's city surveillance ecosystem is both a technological, feat and, of course, a cautionary tale, which shows that a connected city is not automatically a safe one. We must know how to bring ethical balance and, of course, all of those cautionary tale, ethical balance, and, of course, know how to infuse it with the technology and technology control. So if we are not safe, even if we are clamoring for to have more, to have us utilize technology to solve some of our real-time problems, and it is not still solving our problems, what is the issue here? What can we do here?